Welcome to Eviliv, the live media commentary show that answers the question, can werewolves survive werewolf sex? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing Werewolf by Ado van Belkom. Now, I have had the privilege of interviewing Ado on a different channel about different books that he's written, and it was that interview which led me to this book, specifically because of the 3 pages of werewolf sex. And let me just start this by saying, not quite. Not quite werewolf sex. It's almost there. It's like werewolf sex adjacent, but it's pretty good still. All right. So, yes, that was like the entry price for me. But boy, am I glad I did, because this is a really fun novel. And I don't know if it's fun because I am into werewolves. I don't know if it's fun because I actually played this game back in the 90s when this book came out, which I'll get to in a second. I mean, maybe it's a mixture of all of the above, but it was a good time. All right, so let's dive into this. It was written by Ado van Belkom, published by HarperCollins January 1st, 1995. I never really know if those are accurate dates or not. I know the year is usually accurate, but like January 1st, really? All right. This actually was nominated for a Bram Stoker Award when it came out in 1995, which is great because that means that I'm not the only one that liked it. It was a continuation of the short story, A Wolf in Shepherd's Clothing by Ado van Belkom, which I did not know about. And now I have to get the collection called When Will You Rage, this anthology that the publisher White Wolf released. So White Wolf basically, they released Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse and a bunch of other games that fed into this world of darkness that they were creating, this sort of universe that all their games fit within. In order to convince people that it was an interesting game to play or tell them what was expected out of the version of play for this, because up until then, you know, White Wolf came on the scene and it was all just Dungeons and Dragons up to that point with role-playing. And so White Wolf really took it into a completely different storytelling-focused perspective, and they ended up just blowing away Dungeons and Dragons for years. And Dungeons and Dragons ended up like chasing them for the way that they created their role-playing games and stuff. And so they created these novels and these anthologies originally. There was a vampire one and a werewolf one. And then from those, the success of those anthologies, they released novels and stuff. So that's where this came from out of that. And anyway, like the When Will You Rage anthology is sold in the secondary market for up to like $40 or $50. And you might get it as low as 15 if you're lucky, but it's usually around like 20 to $40. But you can just get the digital version sold on like Drive-Thru RPG for $2. So that's what I'm going to be doing. That's my next book that I'm going to read here, because I want to know what that originally A Wolf in Shepherd's Clothing is about. I mean, ultimately it's going to be about this main character that I'm going to get into in a second, but I don't know. I dug it. I really dug this novel, and so I want more of it. You know what I mean? So this was his first novel that he wrote. He had written short stories, of course, before this, but this was the first written novel. I do want to give a shout out about this cover because this reminds me of like the Hardy Boys type, you know, like those like 5th grade pulp sort of like mystery novels. That's what this reminds me of. This is a terrible cover design. Absolutely horrible. It doesn't fit with the World of Darkness branding. It doesn't fit with Werewolf the Apocalypse branding. And if you were just picking this up, you would think the title was World of Darkness Werewolf. And it's not. The title is actually Wormwolf, which is way down at the bottom, which is a weird choice for someone to design this. I'm a art director. I'm a graphic designer by trade. And so bad design always is like a tack in my eye. And that's not good. The second part is that I'm an avid reader. I love reading old pulp novels, you know, stuff that came out from the 80s and 90s. I think they're fun. And there is not this scene in the entire book. Not once. There's no moment when you have a guy pulling a damsel in distress down a forest trail with werewolves creeping in behind them. It doesn't happen once. So I don't know why they do that. You could have literally just had a dude, like a father, like a priest, standing outside of a mission, you know, like a homeless shelter. And that would have been directly related. Or you could have an image of the Werewolf, which is a reference to one of the characters in this novel, which you have no indication of. And all the people that are killed in this novel are like transients, homeless people. I don't say unhoused because that's dumb. They're homeless people. So what? I don't. All right. Whatever. I didn't design it, and I have a problem with the design. It sucks. But I do like Steve Gardner's artwork, who is the artist who painted that cover. So again, if you enjoy that era, he's done a lot of other stuff too. Like his modern paintings and stuff are completely different. So this is a style that is not reminiscent of everything that he's done. But I like that about an artist. I like how artists evolve, writers as well. Okay, so that being said, this is all set in the world of darkness based on the role-playing game Werewolf the Apocalypse, and it's in that universe. And some of the major characters that we run into right off the bat, the protagonist of this novel is Father Wendell Oldman. He basically runs the Scotty mission, and this entire novel is set in the San Francisco and outside of the San Francisco area, primarily, in a district called the Tenderloin District. I don't know if that's real. I don't know if it was made up, but it was believable, so it's real. It's real in my headcanon. Basically, he is doing his best to run a shelter and then just basically, because he's a werewolf, protect his territory. That's really what it comes down to. He's not doing it because he's particularly religious. In fact, he's not even a religious dude at all. He's not even 100% sure he's a priest. Like, he hasn't, like, it sort of left it a little bit ambiguous. Like, he started down the path, but he never finished it, but he just sort of fakes it. All he cares about is he's running a shelter to help people, and then he's trying to protect the other werewolves in the city. Werewolves in this sort of universe are called Geru. So that's another thing that I wanted to call out really quick about this novel is that if you never played any of the role-playing games, and at this point there's video games, board games, and the role-playing game, it doesn't matter. It does such a good job of easing in not just that sort of vernacular of the role-playing games, but it also explains what it means contextually. And so you really don't have to know anything about anything. You just pick up the book and read it, and you're just introduced to a whole new language and a whole new universe, and it's a lot of fun. Because, again, like I said, this was back in 95. I was a whole different human back then. It was like 2 lives ago. That was before my military career, before my college career, before my professional career, so... Like, totally, I don't remember anything about that video or that role-playing game. So I didn't have to, is my point, is that this did a really great job of pushing you into that universe and not requiring supplemental reading in order to understand it. And I appreciated that a lot. And that's tribute to the author and their understanding of the mechanics, of that universe, as it were. So basically, Father Oldman's running this Scotty mission, and he also is sort of scouting for other potential werewolves who may or may not know that they're werewolves, or wolfkin, which are called kinfolk, actually, I think. And then if he finds them, then he has another ranch up in... I actually have it written down here. I just have to find my note. North of Mount... Tamalpais in the Muirwood National Monument. It's called the Scotty Ranch, and it's like a supplemental ranch where he sends people who are werewolves to sort of get their feet underneath them, understand what's going on, and maybe even protect a little bit of the land. So the whole premise behind Werewolf the Apocalypse as a video game and werewolves as a role-playing game and werewolves in this universe is that they protect the natural environment, the earth. They call it Gaia. It's not the first time you've ever heard that, I'm sure, but that's their role. And human influence and the negative poisoning of the human environment, by humans, is referenced as the Wyrm. So it's like this evil force that sort of invades the world, destroying it. You can call that corporatism, you can call it capitalism, you can call it crony capitalism, but it's basically companies destroying the earth for the benefit of all mankind and the detriment of the planet. Stuff we see every single day, which is why I also kind of like it. I'm not like a like a rabid environmentalist, but I'm definitely an environmentalist, and I do my best to minimize the footprint that I leave, because this is the only rock we have we can survive on that we know of. So let's take care of it, right? So that's why I sort of appreciate the character's motivations in this. Hey, Achilles, how you doing, man? Yeah, it's been quite some time. Okay, so sort of leading him up is his right-hand man, Preston Parker. He's the assistant. He's the guy that sort of helps run the mission for him. And then the sort of tertiary character that sort of runs throughout the storyline is called Kenneth Holt, who is ultimately initially introduced as a werewolf victim, but then it turns out to be kinfolk. And that's discovered because werewolves are able to keep their anonymity and secrecy because of something called the delirium. Human beings just cannot rationalize living in a world with werewolves. And so when they see a werewolf, they suffer from something called the delirium, which forces them to sort of rationalize it away. Like, oh, it must not have been what I thought it was. It had to be something else because this thing doesn't exist. It's just this sort of natural human reaction. And so it protects werewolves. But if you are a werewolf, or if you're werewolf kin, meaning someone in your bloodline was a wolf, then you are kind of immune to the delirium and you'll remember it. And so that's how the main character, Mr. Oldman, runs across this particular character, Kenneth Holt, because he was attacked by this rogue werewolf that is just like killing homeless people, and he goes and saves him. And the guy was like, yeah, it was a werewolf that attacked me, and he can't believe it. And so he ends up sending him up to the Scotty mission up in the Muir Wood Monument, and that's where he sort of helps out the other werewolves and stuff. There's like three main storylines that are happening in this novel. First storyline is Father Oldman trying to maintain his mission and protect the people there. The second story is Kenneth Holt realizing who and what he is, and then going to help save and protect the Scotty mission. And the third storyline is that there's like 4 or 5 storylines now I'm thinking about it. And then there's another storyline where there's this character called Wingnut, which is infected, this werewolf that is infected by the Wyrm, that sort of evil force in the world, as it were, who's going around killing the homeless people. And so Father Oldman is looking for this insane werewolf to kill him. I was sold on this book by the premise of there's a 3-page werewolf sex scene, but the strength of this book is the character development, the world building, and that final battle between Wingnut and Father Oldman in his werewolf form is dope as shit. It is badass. It's like the best werewolf fighting you've ever seen, like Dog Soldiers on the silver screen, you know? I mean, you don't know if he's going to make it out alive. At this point in the novel, it's the very end, so you're invested in the character. You want him to survive, but you don't know if he will, if he can. And it's because of Kenneth Holt, who comes in at the last minute, that he was able to survive and defeat this much younger but crazed werewolf. It was very intense, great set that they were sort of going through, and the whole setup of it was really, really fun. So I thought all of the characters were great. There's one that I understood that... Okay, let me just describe it. So there's this woman named... I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes trying to find her. Her name is Miss Caroline Keegan, and she's a reporter for Inside Affair. And she finds someone who would be an interesting piece to do, you know, for her TV show, which is basically I don't know what you call them. They're like the magazines on the rack. They're just like the National Enquirer, like the crazy story magazines, but this is a TV show for it, like TMZ or something like that. So basically, she wants to do a story about this homeless person that was reformed with the help of this mission, and it's going to end in that homeless person getting married to the woman that he ended up finding and falling in love with after he got his life turned around. And so the homeless person went over to Father Oldman and said, hey, I'd like you to marry me. And because Father Oldman never actually went through finishing his seminary to become a full-fledged priest, and he's kept that under the wraps, then he's like, well, no, I can't really do that, but I'll help another priest do it. He doesn't explain why. He just says no. And so when Keegan comes back and says, hey, how about the story? The dude's like, I'm sorry. He said no. She's like, that's weird. Why would he say no? And that triggers her reporter instinct to look into Oldman and find out what secrets he has. It was a bit unbelievable, which was my only complaint about this novel. It made no sense that, to me, that the hook of the story was the priest running the mission, and that's what then caused the reporter to investigate him for some insane reason, because like, oh, he didn't want to do it? That's strange. He must have secrets. And then she finds out about the Scott mission up in Muirwood National Monument, and she goes out there with a reporter trying to find something. Like, she believes instantly that it's a cult, which, how does she make that leap? There's nothing that would tell you that that was the leap to make. And especially after she talked to Oldman and he told her, no, it's just a sort of a retreat, which is literally what it is. So why would she not believe him? Why would she continue it just made no sense. Really, it's a protected place for werewolves, and so that's why he doesn't want people to go there unless they're werewolves. You know, he's trying to protect the land and protect the werewolves. And so she ends up going and investigating, and that's where Kenneth Holt, his story arc is finally realized, because he gets to convince her not to pursue this and have a story about it on her TV show, because then it would reveal the truth about werewolves and this werewolf protected site. All the other werewolves are ready to kill her, and he was like, no, simmer down. Let's just reveal the truth to her and see if she's cool. And if she's not cool, then you can kill her. But that was it. Like, they just told her the truth. She accepted it, and she moved on. And there's no payoff until the very, very end, where she then does a story about the mission in a glowing light about everything that Wendell Oldman does in order to bring in more donations to help keep the mission going, to help homeless people and stuff. It was a leap of logic that I didn't believe. And if you cut that storyline, that thread completely out of the novel, I don't think you would have missed anything. You could have just hyper-focused on the crazed werewolf killing homeless people and Father Oldman doing his best to take care of it. And then there was another storyline that was just sort of thrown in willy-nilly, it seemed like, where some guy in Philadelphia, some rich guy who has influence and power, who's also a werewolf, he didn't tell his son about being a werewolf yet. And so his son, after he got hit puberty early, just immediately manifested his werewolf nature, freaked him the fuck out, and he ran away from home thinking he was a monster and he didn't want to kill his family or anything. So he runs away to San Francisco, where all werewolves go, I guess. So like basically another werewolf was pulled into a lineup accidentally, because of course they all look like humans until they turn into werewolves. And this isn't one where you have to like have a full moon. Like, you can actually just change whenever you want to. So he was pulled in a lineup randomly after he was looking for the kid's boy, for the influential man up in I actually have his name somewhere, but Leonard Gateway. No, that was the son. It's basically the dawn of Philadelphia. So anyway, he's looking for him, and that's Oldman finds him. Wendell Oldman finds this guy looking for this son, and then he ends up helping the son. And I think the whole point of it is to present Father Oldman as a good person. But that was established by the fact that he's running a mission helping people. So you don't need that storyline either. And the fact is this is a very short novel. I mean, it's nearly a novella. You know, it's like 270 pages or something. It's on the cusp of being a novel or a novella. And give me 360 pages and I will eat it up, because I think the story itself, the characters itself, the setting itself is good enough. You don't need that tertiary information. You can just focus on the genuine problem and the hunt and the search and the struggles of that hunt and search. And it would be interesting enough. So I'm not sure why there was all that extra stuff, but it wasn't distracting enough to make me not like the story. It was just enough to make me go, you probably could have cut that out and then fleshed out some more really great confrontation scenes or consequence scenes. Because the reality is werewolves are everywhere in this world. So they're like broken into tribes, and they all live and claim territory in their tribes. You could have a ton of really great intermixing encounters, because he does present some encounters between different werewolves and different tribes, and how they interact with each other is interesting. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. And even if the werewolves didn't want to work together, or if there was some antagonism, then maybe, they were hunting the wrong pack of werewolves longer, and there could have been, some sort of fights there and stuff. And the only reason why I'm focusing on that, the conflict and the fighting, is because it was written so goddamn well. Like, that last fifth of the novel is gold. It is arguably the best of the entire novel, and it's only the last fifth. Like, I wanted more of it because it was so good. I enjoy sex scenes in novels, but I have to say, Clive Barker is my favorite author of all time. And he writes a lot of sex scenes. He's a homosexual man. I don't know how much experience he's had with women. And so when he writes sex scenes, and they're almost every single time with women, it's a little skewed. Like, it reads to me as if he has never had sex with a woman, and he's just writing what he thinks it would be like to have sex with a woman. And so it's a little off. This is not dissimilar from that. And I don't care about the sexuality or gender identity or anything of anyone. That means nothing to me. What's important is the writing of the scene. And while I enjoyed the sex scene, it did feel a little bit like, I can't really relate with some of that, some of the descriptions, and I would have focused on different elements and aspects of it, and it's just personal writing preferences and stuff like that. It's nothing to speak down about the author, because I do think he did a genuinely great job, but it was just a little bit disappointing, because when I was talking with him, he said there was a 3-page werewolf sex scene, and the truth is one of the man was kinfolk, so he wasn't a werewolf. He was just like, he had the bloodline, but not the gene to transform into a werewolf. And the woman was a werewolf, but she was only like half wolf at the time, like not full werewolf, but not full human. She was like sort of in that in-between hairy, weird phase. And it just wasn't that sexy. The idea of fucking a woman with like patches of fur around her when you're like a regular human dude. I don't know. That's not hot to me. That's like 1 foot into bestiality, and I'm not down with that. So weird. It would have been better, in my opinion, if she just stayed a human, or if he could turn into a werewolf. Then have at it, Haas. Do your thing. Do your worst. It was a little bit weird. I don't think it was really the writer. I think it was just the two characters, really. I think that's all it comes down to. Hey, welcome, Keelys. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Okay, that being said, that on the table. My favorite parts of this were the fact that you didn't have to know the vernacular of anything. You didn't have to know anything about the universe. You didn't have to know about these versions of werewolves. It's all explained contextually wonderfully. So I really loved that, and I loved the characters. I thought the characters were really great. They were all flawed in different and interesting ways, so they felt real. They weren't like superhumans, they weren't like Superman or like Anne Rice vampires or something where they're just like able to do whatever. No, they felt like they had real problems and struggles, and they couldn't just solve it by being them. They had to figure out other ways to solve their problems, and I like that. My least favorite part, the fact that we focused on so many tiny other like threads of story that didn't really pay off, in my opinion, to the core of the point, which is the title of the book, which is the rabid werewolf killing people and the good werewolf hunting and killing him. Like, that is the core of the story. That's what I wanted more of. But even with all that said, this was great for what it was, a werewolf story. It was perfect for a werewolf story. And unlike any werewolf story that I've read or seen on TV before or on films. So that's what I really appreciate. When Dog Soldiers came out, it was completely different than anything in the werewolf genre. This is similar. Of course, this came out in 95, but I understand why it was nominated for a Bram Stoker Award. It's good. It's a good novel, and 5 Evil Eyes is what it deserves. I wish there was more novels written in this, like sequels that he could have written or other works that he did in this universe. He did some of the game products, and he did the short story that led into this novel. But ultimately, I want more from this author. I think Ado van Belkom, and he did other werewolf stories, like wolf stories, that were made into like current TV shows that are on Paramount Plus right now. So he's an accomplished, award-winning author who has done great work. So definitely check out Ado van Belkom's work, his literature, short stories. He did some stuff on like horror film. He did like the intro and outro of horror films and did some like talk shows and stuff. So check him out. He's really great. The novel is wonderful. If you like werewolf fiction, definitely check it out. I'm going to be doing that anthology next because I really want to see if the other ones are as good and if his lead-in short story is as good as the novel. Because if it is, it's going to be dope. All right. That is it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you, Achilles, for your support. I really do appreciate it. I just got approved on this channel for memberships. So if you want to support, show a little bit of love for the channel, for any of my past projects that I'm putting up on the channel or the future products like this, I do genuinely appreciate it. It means a lot to me. You can look at that it's just at Eviliv3/join. So YouTube /@Eviliv3/join. All right. Thank you once again. As always, remember that evil spelled backwards is live, so get out there and be evil. Only have sex with a werewolf if you're a werewolf, is what I'm saying.